Hi, welcome along to the third and final Compassionate Q&A session with me, Dr Marianne Trent. I am a qualified clinical psychologist. And for those of you who tuned in last week, you may remember that I'm a qualified clinical psychologist with a broken wing. Thank you very much for being here today. We did only have one of these last week, but if you need some more compassion, if you need, if you've got more questions, let me know. I'm here for you. Please, if you are watching live, please do, and even if you're watching on replay for that matter, please do drop a comment into the comments so that I know that you can hear me okay. It would be a terrible state of affairs if I managed to get through a whole hour and nobody could hear a word I was saying. So please do, give me a hi. Let me know you can hear me. And if you haven't ever watched one of my lives before, you might well need to go along to, or not choose to, it's optional, go along to streamyard.com/whatever you're watching on. So it might be Facebook, LinkedIn, and then give it permission to see your data. There we go. So we've got the lovely Lizzie, and I know that this lady said it was fine for me to say her name last time, so I know who it is. It's Nikita. And Nikita was recently successful on getting a place on training, so well done again to Nikita. Hello, Amana. Hope I've said your name right. Okay, so did I just say hello to you, Lizzie? I think I did. Hello, Lizzie. Right. I was just running a session from 6 till 7 in my membership before this, and then I've been hastily putting one child to bed, and then the other one's been out. So yes, I've hot-footed it to come and see you guys. How was the first of your May bank holidays? There's a lovely Katia. Welcome. Yes, how was the first of your bank holidays? Has it geared you up for the second and the third? It is a rather tricky month to run a membership in, where I run membership lives on Mondays, because there were lots of Mondays where we're not doing that. We're we're giving ourselves some leeway to be able to drink some champagne on bank holidays, or just to sit around and watch things on Netflix. That is also fine too. Yes. So, have you got any questions that you would want answered? I also should let you know, if you're watching on Twitter, we for some reason don't get any comments come through. So if you are watching on Twitter, I won't see your question. So please do feel free to take a detour to another medium if you want a question answered. So we've got my Facebook, which is Dr Marianne Trent. You can watch that without joining any groups or liking it. But if you wanted to like the page, that would be welcomed. And we've got the Aspiring Psychologist Community, brackets free group. You can watch there. You can watch on YouTube, Dr Marianne Trent. LinkedIn, Dr Marianne Trent. It should be an open event. So I can see all of those comments. So we're not getting any questions, which to me tells me that you guys are maybe just feeling like you need a bit of love. Because this is a really tricky process. So I know that some of you have had success. I know that some of you are still in the middle of all of this, and you may be gearing yourself up for an interview. You may be in the middle of interviews. You may have had 1, 2 and be waiting for more. You may have heard outcomes about any interviews you've had. You may well have heard outcomes about you may saw a comment that made me laugh, and I'll read that in a minute. You may well have heard outcomes that didn't make you feel good in your heart, your soul, made you feel dejected, and that might have come as a result of your interviews. It might have come as a result of your application, and it can be I've a phrase in my head that I'm not sure is appropriate to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. It can be. I hope I'm not going to offend anyone when I say this. I'm like wondering if this is like really rude. It can be hard to keep your. I don't know if I can say it. It can be hard to keep your pecker up. Is that a thing I can say on a live? It can be hard to maintain your cheerful outlook and your disposition when it feels like you are so we had a recent sadness in our house where it involved football teams for my youngest, and it led to he was asked to perhaps find a new team next year, and that was difficult because it made him feel very rejected, and it can feel difficult to not take that sort of thing personally. Sometimes it's just a question of whether it's not about us, it's about there being so many other people who are more ready for this time right now, or sometimes we just feel like we haven't been able to properly convey what we wanted to say, what we could have said, what we should have said. And for some reason, it might only have led to you scoring a couple of less points than somebody else, which leads to you not getting the outcome that you wanted. So, Nikita, wrong one. Sorry, Nikita. Am I allowed to say that? Is that a thing? Have I just been like mortally offensive? What even is that? Like, but that was in my mind. So, Nikita says she just lingers for the continued compassion. So, absolutely welcome, and actually I think it's fair to say that trainees even need this stuff. They need someone that gets where they're at and that gets how many different directions you can be pulled in. And so there's always room for compassion. And even as qualified member of staff, I've struggled with my own compassion over this last week since breaking my arm. I've just very much veered more into pity, and I think that's an interesting question in itself. Was some people say, oh, I don't need compassion, it's just all about pity, and it's not. It's not. I feel like compassion should be quite active, and for me pity is more of a state, not a trait. And I would always aim for compassion to be a trait, for something that runs through everything. Whereas I would hope this is not going to be a trait. Certainly, my inability to use my arm, I hope, is going to be a state and not a trait. So already today, I noticed I was able to hold slightly heavier things in my left hand than I have been able to like lately. So I hope, but also I've got quite a tired arm. My poor little arm is quite tired. It's worn out. Its muscles have already, got a bit fed up of being in this constant position. And yeah, they atrophy. Not a good word, is it? But they do atrophy rather quickly. So we have Facebook user here. So that comes up if you haven't been to streamyard.com/Facebook, but you absolutely don't have to do that. You can stay anonymous if you would like to, but higher to you too. So let me know what your reason for tuning in is. And it might be that you are just on Facebook and happen to see me, and that's absolutely okay too. It might be that you're like, I went to school with you once, Marianne, and I thought I'd see what you're up to. That's okay too. Compassion is not just for aspiring psychologists. Compassion is for everybody. And people are, I think, at this stage feeling a little bit burned, and it's just knowing that that's to be expected when you do feel like you haven't got where you wanted to be, perhaps where you felt ready to be. And it can feel a bit tricky to hold faith that things will be different. and still to give yourself permission to dare to dream, So I would absolutely still be allowing yourself to imagine, that name badge moment where you get your first name badge that says trainee clinical psychologist or trainee counselling psychologist, whichever discipline floats your boat. If it's a paid position, you're going to allow yourself to imagine how it will feel when you see your first pay slip, for that role. These are just jobs, but they're also not just jobs, are they? This feels like a vocation for me. This feels like something that I'm very passionate about. It feels, and we were having a chat in my membership this evening about retiring and how that can be tricky for somebody because they're saying goodbye to a big and important, for many people, chunk of their identity. And yeah, for me, I feel like I can't really imagine a time where I won't be practicing some element of psychology. I won't be writing something or doing things for somebody or seeing somebody for therapy. But I guess there will come a time where I won't want to do that anymore. And I will just want to focus on other things, whatever they are. But maybe not. Maybe I will just keep on doing it. But yeah, when we can't do certain things or choose not to do certain things, it can impact on our sense of identity. And so if you had hoped you would be having news that you're a trainee by now, it can feel hard, as I said, to keep your morale high. So be kind to yourself, look after yourself, and I guess try to think about the factors we can control. So if we think about all the whirling things, it can feel overwhelming, can't it? But thinking about the small things we can do. So, I had a slight brain fog moment. So we went away at the weekend, and I decided, because I can't drive at the moment, that I'd organise for a food delivery for late afternoon of the day we were back, which was yesterday. And I thought I'll put some bread in, but I added the bread we used to get by doing reorder, and I thought, oh, I'll take that out in a minute, and I must have forgotten to take that out, but I'd already added the bread that we now get. Very boring bread story. And then I'd also asked someone that lives locally to get us some bread. So yesterday I suddenly had 3 loaves of bread. I was like, well, I've got a bread abundance. I've got an abundance of bread. I can't remember why I started talking to you about bread. Why did I start talking to you about bread? Something about brain fog. But I can't remember why. Anyone remember why I started talking to you about bread? Because I've forgotten. I'm not sleeping very well at the moment with the poorly wing. Yes, and I can't remember why I started that. It's harder than you'd imagine to just talk to yourself. Has anyone tried it? I've been doing some element of lives now for the last, I'm going to say, 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. So yeah, maybe longer. And yeah, you get better at it. You get better at not expecting an answer, but sometimes you do. I'll own that. Lose my train of thought. Whatever the purpose, it's good to know you have an abundance of bread. I can rest well now. Good, yes. So we have had many many bread-based meals. So yesterday me and my husband had garlicky mushrooms on toast. And then this morning he made himself some sandwiches for work, and little boy had toast for breakfast. And then at lunchtime, I gave myself a bread-based meal, had noodles and toast because I was in that kind of mood. And then this evening we have had I can be bothered. I can be bothered. And I know I've just remembered why I've started this train of thought. I couldn't be bothered, and I was like, I can't be bothered to cook what I was supposed to be cooking. What what bread-based meal shall we have? And so I had scrambled egg on toast, and the kids had bacon sandwiches. And sometimes when we're hurting, we reach for the easiest option, probably the bread-based option, even when you haven't got like 3 loaves of bread to get through. But sometimes it's thinking about how you can honor yourself, how you can nourish yourself optimally. So as I was making this evening's bread-based meal, I was yearning for a butler. I was like, oh, I'd really like a butler to come and care for me optimally, to make me like the meals that Prince Charles would have, something that's really well balanced and nutritious and delicious, and that I don't have to cook, because it is quite tricky to cook with a broken arm, and I just don't feel like it. It's hard when you're feeling in pain and tired. So I yearned for a butler to nourish me optimally. But I think there's something to be said there as well, that when you are reeling from whatever news you might have received, that maybe you can ask someone else to step in and cook for you, or invite yourself around to people's houses for meals where they're not going to expect you to be, performing a circus act, where you can just go and be yourself and be fed well from someone who can be bothered, right now, and who nourishes you physically and emotionally. I think that's really important. I had this moment when I was in Thailand, when I was backpacking. Before I even got my first assistant post, this was after graduating, and I've been in Thailand for 6 weeks. That's how long I was there, and every day was marvelous. Every day another beautiful view, another beautiful experience, another beautiful restaurant. But sometimes you can get quite burned out and quite jaded of eating out all the time. Sometimes you do just want beans on toast. And it's in those moments that when you're away, it's hard to do that, Restaurants don't tend to want to serve you beans on toast, especially ones in Thailand. We don't always want something very fancy. Sometimes we do crave our comfort food, something just quite plain and bland. And so it's thinking about giving yourself a balance of things that are going to nourish you, but also comfort you. Because, I'm not a nutritionist, but what we mostly know is that bread is fairly devoid of nutrition for us as humans. I think there's some theory that sourdough is better, but still it contains wheat and it's usually made from white processed flour. Is it amazing for us? Probably not. And so can we make different, more mindful, more nourishing choices that are going to make our bodies feel more energized and zing with health? So the topic of these conversations, I'll answer that one in a minute, Nikita. The topic of these conversations is always varied. I didn't know I was going to end up telling you about my 3 loaves of bread. But yeah, I can talk about most things. So you can freeze the bread. Yes, you can. But I do seem to have developed my mother's ability to maintain a fully stocked freezer without actually having super loads of meals in there. It's bags of chopped parsley and things like that. Some leeks I chopped up and I haven't used yet. So yes, there's not always a lot of room in my freezer. Certainly not for a whole loaf of bread. Certainly not for 3 whole loaves of bread. But for those of you on Bread Watch, you will be delighted to know that we have now finished the whole first loaf of bread and we are halfway through the second loaf. So I think we're going to get there without them all going out of date, which is excellent bread-related news. So please don't. No bread has been harmed wasted in the making of this bread slip up. Okay. Have we got any other thoughts, comments, questions, reflections? This third one is always a quieter session, because many people have already been interviewed, so the first one's always the busiest because it's like, I've got these things coming up. But many of you will have had that. There's 2 of you on here I know who've had happy news. And so, you're here anyway, which I adore. But it's maybe that the need for this is not quite so acute at this stage. But I do like to holistically offer, throughout the season, just in case you are feeling stressed out. So it may be that we make this one briefer because I've still got a child to shower after not swimming. What did he do? Football. So many activities. So yeah, if there aren't any more questions, it may be that we make this short and sweet. But yeah, let me give you a couple of minutes warning in case you're like waiting in the wings. But our time is precious. And especially when we've been working really hard, as I'm sure all of you are, sometimes you don't want to be listening to some woman drone on. Sometimes you want to be watching Married at First Sight or just reading something, that's not psychology related. So there's absolutely, you need to care for yourself, So James says, what are your feelings? This thing cuts into my neck. What are your feelings on courses having a mold? Could you tell me a little bit more about what you mean, James? Do you mean that they attract certain types of people? That it's a one-size-fits-all approach? Do let me know. And Nikita says, get yourself to your family. I will do shortly. Thank you, Nikita. So I would assume you possibly mean that. So I would say that, if that's the question you mean, James, that it can be important to make sure as much as possible that you're picking courses that feel aligned to you and to your values. But I'm also mindful of the fact that we do not all live in an ideal world, and that you might well have made the choices of your courses because they're closest to your house and you've got, factors that mean that you can't just up and move, or you don't choose to, or you don't want to. And so it might be that you find yourself in the position of feeling like you're not the type of trainee that they usually would want or that they seem to have on their course. So I'm aware that in the past there's been certain courses that seem to have a reputation for certain ways of being, particularly academic, and kind of prioritizing academic experience almost over clinical, or wanting certainly there to be lots of academic experience. And so from that aspect, it might be that there's some element of rigidity, expectations, the kind of trainee that they want to be able to have on their course. But that said, we're supposed to be like an equal opportunities employer here as well. And I would hope that if you are answering their questions and doing it in a way that feels human, and hopefully authentic to you, that if you are scoring those points, that they're going to be responding to that positively, that you're going to score those points and you'll get offered those places. But yeah, I think I did I? So 3 of the courses I chose because they felt closely aligned to me. I don't know why I chose the 4th one, because actually it was the highly academic one, and I didn't have loads of academic experience. I don't know why I chose that. And if I had my time again, that's the only one that didn't offer me an interview. So if I had my time again, I probably would pick somewhere different, especially because I was single at the time. I've always actually would love to have lived by the sea. I don't know why I didn't pick one of the seaside courses. So yeah, if you can, I would say, and it might be too late because you might already have done it, but look at what is unique about that course, the reasons why you picked it to begin with. And if it is just that it was like closest, it's like 4 miles from your house and it felt like a no-brainer, then you might need to reflect on that. But I would say, the course that I trained with are largely, they like you to be human and able to reflect and probably quite compassionate. But we didn't really do compassion focused therapy, wasn't ever taught to us, but I would hope it is now. I would hope it is now because it seems so integral to getting through this career of ours. So I haven't seen another comment come in from James, but I hope that was a useful answer. And if you are watching, I hope I got the right gist of it. So I'll give you another couple of minutes warning just before we finish, because we're a quieter group today. But if you would welcome a little bit more compassion and a little bit more viewpoints of other people who've been in your position or who are in your position currently, then do please think about checking out the Clinical Psychologist Collective and the Aspiring Psychologist Collective. And if you like what we do in these lives, then the Aspiring Psychologist membership might also be an incredible fit for you. And we really take a deep dive on lots of these topics that we discuss in a way that people find really useful. So do consider that. And there's no minimum term contract. You can leave at any point you decide it isn't for you. Thank you so much, Lizzie. Highly recommend the membership. Facebook user. Hi, Marianne. I've had one interview so far and another one next week. Feeling a bit burnt out already. So this has been lovely. Thank you. You're so welcome. You are, I don't know who you are, but you are very talented and special, because you must be, in order to be getting interviews for this doctorate course. They are not given out like lollipops. They are not. You've earned your stripes, and you need to just practice lifting your head a little higher. And also, I think the first interview I had didn't light me up from within, but I was pleased in hindsight that one had been first, because the second one I had, the third one never happened because the whole course got cancelled. I might have picked the third one. Had it gone ahead. But I was very happy with the one I did choose, and I would have been very happy if I picked the other one, I'm sure. But I just felt like so energized. And so I would hope that maybe your second experience of your interview leaves you feeling very different. So keeping my fingers crossed for you. I don't know if you've heard the outcome of your interview yet. I presume you may either be waiting, or it might have been not an outright place. But yeah, if that feels safe to share, especially because you're come up as Facebook user rather than a name, then please do drop that in. Nikita, really appreciate all you have done and continue to do throughout this process. Thanks for holding the space. Thank you for using the space so warmly, Nikita. And if you're not on my lives next year, I will miss you. I will miss you. But I will know that you're living I will hope you're living your best life. Yeah, I can't know that, but I would hope that for you, and know that we're here if you need us. Oh, I can't deselect. I've pressed the wrong button. Oh, wonderful name. Silvia Andrea, Christy, Chris. I haven't got my glasses on. Carita, I'm going to say. Your thoughts on what experience to pursue prior to applying for the doctorate. So it's so varied for different people. But what I would say is that people find the Clinical Psychologist Collective, and certainly the more recent Aspiring Psychologist Collective, a really useful overview of what is typically garnering people really great experiences. So I would say the best, most efficient way for me to answer that question would be for you to check those out. And they're wonderfully nourishing and compassionate reads in themselves. LinkedIn user. I really struggle to bring myself and my own opinions into interview answers. My answers are more general. Do you have advice, please? My main advice is this is what we do really, really well in the membership. We develop people's confidence in weaving in theory, practice, and personal reflections. And that's something that we've done. I've shared quite a lot with the group today, even about my own recent ponderings, and tried to bring in some relevant theory. So that's the best advice I have about that, because we do that a lot in the interview, and people in the membership, and people have spoken very highly of how that brings their confidence on. So I'm afraid I don't have time to do that justice, but it's not something that you are alone with in your struggles with that, and it feels sometimes a bit like oversharing, or you're not quite sure where to draw the line on what to share. So please know it's not just you, and sometimes seeing it in practice and seeing others do it can be really energizing, and really, you can think, oh, I love that answer. I love the way they did that. How can I bring something like that? Or if I'd answered that question, how would I answer it? So I appreciate it's not the fullest of answers, but yeah, I hope that's useful. I'd put money on me lingering. Yeah, thank you, Nikita. I haven't heard back yet, hopefully by Friday or next Tuesday. And it's the waiting, isn't it, that can be exquisite torture, because via our very human brains, we will find ourselves mulling over everything we said, but also bearing in mind that we tend to have a negative attribution bias, and we will tend to focus on the tumbleweed moments, or the moment that you mixed up words that you didn't mean to, or, the things you didn't say, but we often forget to celebrate the things that were good or good enough. And so just, yeah, refer to my point about the butler. Look after yourself, nourish yourself. If anyone has a butler they'd like to lend me for a week, well, I need them for 5 weeks actually. Send them my way. And when I'm done with them, I'll send them back. Okay. Millie, such a lovely space you've cultivated. I'm a first-year trainee, but I always point aspiring psychs in your direction for your expertise and compassion. Well, that's gosh darn going to make me cry, Millie. Thank you. I hope that you are finding training to be, largely speaking, an enjoyable ride. That's what I would say, Millie. It's not easy, is it? Especially if you've upped your life to move to a different part of the country. I started the course single and had imagined that I would have 14 new best friends, all of who were single and ready to party. It was not the case. And I moved to the city that I was living in thinking that would be, the best thing to do. And I think it probably was, but everybody was sort of living their lives, living with their partners. I think there was perhaps me and one other single person on the course, and that was a guy. We didn't fancy each other. Like, it wasn't easy. It's not always easy. And even getting to know your cohort well enough, it can be quite intense to begin with, but until they're proper solid friends and you've got memories and you can share all your raw vulnerabilities as well as the hilarious anecdotes, it can feel tricky. It can feel lonely. And we've got a podcast episode coming up on that soon too. So yeah, thank you for your wonderful comments, Millie. And yeah, if you need any support at any point in future, you know where I am. Okay, so I've got a little beast to shower, and we are a quieter session today. So yeah, if you love what we do, then do stay in my world. And do bear in mind that we have new podcast episodes on Mondays at 6 a.m. I have got a couple in the bank, but they're not edited yet. So if you've got any ideas for what you might like to listen to on a podcast episode, do let me know. I was thinking I should do something around the coronation, but I couldn't think of anything relevant for aspiring psychologists. So I thought I can't just do a podcast episode about the fact that I like coronation chicken. That's probably not going to wash. So yes, I either need to finish the edit for one I've already got, but it feels quite monumental, doesn't it? And it feels like there ought to be some sort of what's going on right now, and that all these bank holidays, I was going to call them sodding bank holidays, all of because I think that's how it feels to aspiring psychologists and to people who run memberships that run on Mondays. They feel like sodding bank holidays, and then my kids aren't at school and they're bothering me for Robux and trying to get me to buy them Prime. I'd rather they were at school. Yes. They feel like sodding bank holidays. I remember when I was growing up, and me and my friend Vicky used to like going shopping together. It gets stuck under my sling constantly. And we used to hate bank holidays because we were students. And it meant we couldn't shop because at that stage, I think all the shops were shut. But then once you start working, you're like, bank holidays are great. But when you have kids, and then it means they're home. You can't just lay flat for the day. Okay. Nikita, your message made me smile. Have a great rest of the week, Marianne. Keep your pecker up. I will do. If you missed the first part of this meeting, that is a phrase I used whilst slightly dying inside, wondering if I'd said something awful. So I might well Google where the origins of that word come from. Right. Yes. If you need me, you know where I am. If you find these sessions helpful, I'd really love it if you'd leave me a testimonial, which you can do by dropping a comment in, even if you're watching on replay, or if you're connected to me on LinkedIn, you can write me a recommendation. And if you really like them, you could buy me a cup of tea, a cup of herbal tea, by going to the link on my link tree. And there you can donate a small amount of money if you would like to. I will drop that in here in case you would like to know what it is. There's lots of other resources on there as well, things about how you can download free bits and pieces, and all good things. Let me just drop a comment in there in case you want to see what it is. So it's Linktree, Dr. Marianne Trent. There we go. So there. But yes, only do that if you have a couple of pounds to spare. But any donations are gratefully received, but no obligation. But yeah, check out the books and check out the podcast and let me know of any ideas for future content that you'd love to see. And yeah, thank you for being part of my world. And I hope that you won't need these sessions in the same way next year, but you're always welcome. It will be this year. It'll be September. There'll be likely be more compassionate Q&As to support the application season, which will be September in some time. So I will see you then, and be kind to yourselves until then. Bye-bye. And my wing will be fixed by then, and I'll be back to doing yoga. And will I go back to bike riding? Probably, hopefully. It might feel a bit worrying to begin with. Anyway, have a lovely evening. Have a lovely rest of the week. Be kind to yourself and know that I'm sending you my warmest, compassionate wishes for whatever you've got coming up next. Take care. Bye.